Welcome back to the house. Even though it's almost December, it is a beautiful, warm, sunny morning. And it's a day I've been really looking forward to because today I'm going to be giving a power wash to all the walls that I've been scrubbing over the last week or so. I don't know how it's going to go or how long it's going to take, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how the walls look at the end of it. And I think I'll probably be getting quite wet and a little bit muddy. After all the brushing and scrubbing on these walls, there is a lot of dust around, and some of these stones are still covered in dust, and I'd like to take that dust off. And some of the joints of mortar in between are still a little bit loose, and the best way to, I think, clear it out is to give it a power wash. So I'm going to be using a Karcher with this high-powered gun, and I'll be starting up the top, probably on a ladder, and then working my way down, and we'll see how it goes. Well, I reckon that's a pretty good start. Certainly the stones, the natural colour of the sort of the brown is already coming through nicely, and the loose mortar is coming off very easily. There's a couple of patches where it's a bit thicker where I might have to have a bit of a rerun, and already with the sun being so warm it's drying out and the stones are going that bit lighter, dustier colour, but I reckon it's a pretty good start. On this next bit of wall, I'm not going to try and make it perfect or immaculate, and I've got to be a bit careful because there are a few structural points that are a bit weak. But I will give it a scrub and just see if I can tidy up certain parts to make it look a bit better. This next section is probably the one I've been looking forward to the most because I've never seen either of these walls without either render or a lot of dust on them. Unfortunately, they're also going to be the ones that are most difficult to clean because getting up to the higher parts, it's going to be tricky. So I'm going to start from up here and then do a bit of ladder work and see how we go. And this is the one that I'm really looking forward to seeing the change on. Well, it definitely looks a bit different. I'm pretty pleased with the results so far. It'll probably need a couple more washes. Then there are certain parts where the mortar is still quite thick on the stones. But overall, I think it's pretty good. Bit of a half-time break. The prediction of getting dirty and muddy is definitely coming true. And one of the reasons for stopping now is to refill the deposit tank, which I'm using to power the Karcher. So at the moment, the house doesn't have either mains electricity or a mains water supply. So every time I need to use a power tool, I have to use the generator. And then in terms of water, this house, like all the other ones around here, is entirely dependent upon boreholes because there is no mains water supply because the nearest towns are quite a long way away. And when I first bought the house, I didn't actually have any water supply at all. So I did actually then have to drill a borehole so that I could draw water up. And I'll show you that now. So this is the top of the borehole here. And beneath it is a hole that goes down to about 150 meters. And there's a pump at the bottom of that then pulls and pushes the water up through this black pipe. And most of the time I put it into that deposit just there. I'll probably be doing some other videos about the power situation and how I got the borehole drilled. But for now I'm going to take a break, have some lunch, and then I'll get back on to power washing the remaining walls. This was a scene from earlier in the day that I wanted to share because it had looked so peaceful. But seeing the balloons move up and down so much, perhaps it was a little less peaceful than I thought. So I've done this side and the one around the corner now, and to get to the other wall on the other side of the house, I'm just going to have to change things around a bit. So a bit of work just moving pipes and the generator. So the reason for moving stuff around is that if I wanted to keep using the same hose pipe on the wall there and around the other side, I needed to connect it to this deposit here rather than the one around the corner. I didn't actually have this deposit in place until yesterday when I came and did a bit of prep work, which I can show you now. And now the setup I've got is the same as I had before. So it comes out the deposit, goes into a filter here, then goes into a pump here so that we get enough pressure going along the hose pipe to where the Karcher is, connects to the generator, and then the hose pipe runs from the pump over the top to the Karcher around the other side. So now it should be ready to crack on with the second half of the work. While I was cleaning this wall, I noticed how dirty the steps were going up to the church next door, and I started to feel pretty guilty about it. So I decided I better clean the steps as well. Well, it's been a long but fairly successful day. I actually finished work on the house about 2 hours ago, but spent the last couple of hours cleaning some steps on the church. Started off the work on this wall today and did a good job at taking the dust off and also the mortar between the joints. But in doing so, when the mortar then runs down the face, it creates a new sort of dust and cover on the stones. But I think after a couple of days when it's dried out with a bit of wind and maybe a little bit of rain, that'll clear up quite nicely. But it's looking good at the moment, I think. Now I'll show you the other walls that I've worked on. I worked on this wall second and it was covered in dust originally. Now it's looking a lot more natural stone, a little dark. Same effect with the mortar as on the last wall. But I think again, after a couple of days, it ought to dry and then the dust will probably blow off on its own. But I'm really pleased with the way it looks, and hopefully when it's repointed with mortar, it'll look super smart. On this wall, I did a pretty good job at cleaning the mortar up for certain parts of the stones in between the joints. But as you can see from the dirt on the ground, a lot of the mortar then went over the top of the stones and has now got a bit of a layer of dust. So again, I'll give it a couple of days and see how it looks and maybe give it another wash. And then finally, this was the last wall I worked on. You might recall that it actually looked pretty reasonable beforehand, so I'm not sure it looks a whole lot better. Same effect as on the other walls is that when you're cleaning out the mortar between the joints, it then runs over the stones and creates this sort of veneer of dust. But again, give it a couple of days and we'll see how it clears up, and I might just give it another wash after that. The final bit of work I did was actually cleaning these steps on the church, and I appreciate I haven't actually introduced the church before, but yeah, the steps were very dirty and I felt a bit sorry for them, so I spent a bit of time cleaning them up. So that's the end of the day, and the house has certainly had a pretty reasonable power shower, and probably just about the only thing that needs a shower now is me, because as predicted, it's been pretty dirty, pretty muddy and very wet, but a lot of fun and a good and successful day.